Hey everyone, here's something I've been meaning to do for a few weeks. Some of you may remember that early last year, I think it was, doesn't that seem like a long time ago now, I did a couple videos talking very specifically about two Godzilla CDs I'd gotten. One was the soundtrack for Godzilla, King of the Monsters, score composed by Bear McCreary. I love this CD. And the other was the Best of Godzilla 1984 to 1995, featuring the music of the Heisei era. This disc is actually the second half of a pair, and I received the first half, the Best of Godzilla 1954 to 1975, for my birthday. So, in keeping with tradition, I'm going to tell you what I think of it. And like the other two videos, this may or may not include the sounds of a human warbling in an attempt to sound like an entire orchestra. So brace yourselves. Since this CD is showcasing music from the Showa era of Godzilla films, the cover art reflects that. We've got a Showa era Goji suit in the foreground. I think that's from the first one, although I have never been able to keep all the suits straight. The back of the CD has a poster from the original 1954 film, and the picture is identical, so I'm gonna say that's what this is. But in the background are some of Godzilla's most famous friends and foes, including Mothra up here, Rodan, I'm doing this backwards, King Ghidorah, Mothra's little fairy twins are down here in the corner, and right here, if you can see that, whoop, is, is Kamakuras, which is funny. I don't know, why did they include him, of all people, and not someone more prominent in the series, like Mechagodzilla or Gigan? The booklet for this CD is very similar to the one for the Heisei series. It includes some poster art, along with a more detailed track list. There are some quick notes on the films, and some liner notes about Godzilla's four fathers, and the information is more extensive when it comes to Akira Ifukube, who composed roughly half of the music on this CD. There's also a translation provided of Mothra's song with Japanese, Malay, and English lyrics, so that's fun. Something that distinguishes this CD from its partner is the inclusion of sound effects lifted straight from the films. So your listening experience starts out exactly the same way the franchise does, with Godzilla's massive earth-shaking footsteps and that iconic roar. With a good pair of headphones, and I do have a reasonably good pair. Fun fact, it was actually when I was doing one of these videos that I broke my last pair. With a good pair of headphones, it sounds really impressive, very clean. Then, just like the movie does, it launches into the main title music, that famous theme that's reappeared in many of the films. I think of it as Godzilla's theme, although there are a couple other contenders, and every time it appears, I'm sure the fans are like, yes! This is the original, and I think it is still among the best renditions of the theme. It's at just the right tempo, with a sense of urgency and mounting tension. I've heard a couple versions from other films where it's slowed down a little bit more, or they've added some other instrumentation. I was going to say noise, and I don't like that so much. I like it to be, I guess I'm a purist when it comes to the Godzilla theme. The next several tracks are also from the first film. First, there's Temple Festival music, and then the Japanese Army theme. This was reused in a couple later films, though I do confess it was sometimes hard for me to distinguish one military march from another. This first one is the most memorable, though, and what I like about it is how, to me, it waffles between light and dark. Kind of like the lighting in this video. One line sounds triumphant, and then it's like there's a shadow, and then it goes full dark for a line, and then it's like the march shakes it off and is like, nope, we're going to fight the monster and we're gonna win. The next one is Godzilla Comes Ashore, a track that is so far down in the lower register that it's almost not like music anymore. There's some great discordant piano there. After that is Godzilla's Rampage, which is like a continuation of the track before, very stately and threatening, another theme that can be heard with a slight variation in later films. This section ends appropriately with music from Gogeta's final scene with Godzilla's and Dr. Serizawa's deaths. It's a somber track with a mournful choir that's reminiscent of the children's choir from the Prayer for Peace scene. I'm surprised they didn't include that, because when I think about the music from that first film, the Prayer for Peace is one of the things that comes to mind. Track 8 is the main title from Godzilla Raids Again, composed by Masaru Sato. No particularly memorable theme here, but it's a good theme to open an adventurous monster movie. And it kind of fits, because Godzilla Raids Again, I don't think is anybody's favorite Godzilla sequel, but it's not a bad movie. It has its redeeming moments. Well, depending on who you ask. Next up are selections from King Kong vs. Godzilla, with Ifukube back as composer. Now, it's to my chagrin that when I watched this movie, the music did not stand out to me so much. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was just so distracted by some of the visuals and by the dubbing. That was the first movie that I had to watch in its dubbed version, and I was very unhappy about it. But it's unfortunate that I kind of missed out on the music, because it's great. Track 9 is audio from the scene where Godzilla bursts out of the iceberg and the helicopter pilot IDs him. Ah! Gogeta! It segues into the awesome main title music, which I only fully appreciated after the fact, listening to it separately. It's an awesome track, very intense. I don't know what the lyrics to the tribal chant are. The booklet didn't include a translation for that one, and it's probably just as well, because if I wanted to sing along, I don't know, that would make me sound like a crazy person. I'm pretty sure this music was incorporated into the end titles for Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, which is mainly the Godzilla theme, but then this is thrown in the middle, and it's so cool. And I think that people are hoping that this music will appear in Godzilla vs. Kong, the much-delayed sequel to Godzilla King of the Monsters and Kong Skull Island. I would love to see that, but I don't know that that will happen, because someone else is doing the music. After that, there's 12 seconds of King Kong's roar. That's the Toho version of King Kong's roar, of course. I could have done without this. It's not very pleasant when you're happily listening to music, and then all of a sudden there's this giant roar in your ears. It's a little startling. It concludes with a track titled Planning King Kong's Transport, which refers either to when they tied him down on the raft or when they lifted him out of the city with balloons. This one opens and closes with a round where strings play the melody and brass comes in to repeat the melody in the next line. It's very cool. I only picked up on it after listening to it like 4 times. Track 13 is a bonus, Mothra's song from Mothra, composed by Yuji Koseki, with vocals performed by the Peanuts, Emi and Yumi Ito. Godzilla purists might protest the inclusion of this track. I know there are some people who have heard this song so often that they're sick of it, but I'm not. I think it's one of the highlights of the CD. This is the version that debuted in the first Mothra film, when the twins have been captured and are forced to perform the song as an act, and it's a great scene. I love the gusto of the performance, the orchestrations, the unison, and then the split harmonies, and I love that once you hear it, it gets stuck in your head for days, because they just sing the same thing about 6 times, and It's wonderful. I must say, though, that the lyrics that are included in the booklet, the Malay lyrics, that's what the song is sung in, are kind of hard to follow. There are a couple syllables that just seem to disappear, so singing along while looking at the lyrics is tricky. I can manage it, though. Masuraya, Masura, Dongan Kasakuyan, Indomu, Rustowiyadwa, Hanba Muyan, Randan Banun Radan, Tuamjun Kanra, Kasakuya. Well, I had to try. Naturally, this track is followed by some Mothra sound effects and the main title from Mothra vs. Godzilla, one of the best Godzilla sequels and the one that seems to have introduced Godzilla's other famous theme. Bum, 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 psh, bum, bum, bum. That one. By the way, the very beginning of this track reminds me of the instrumentation at the very beginning of Requiem from Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. That observation will hopefully be of interest to someone. And the track's big finish actually introduces another theme, which I know is expanded elsewhere, but since I'm kind of swimming in musical motifs right now, I'm not sure where I know it from. It's done here at a slower tempo. Bum, 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 bum. I'm familiar with it being a little faster, like twice as fast. I don't know where that's from. It must be something that's on this disc. I can't remember! The other track included from Mothra vs. Godzilla is another personal favorite, Sacred Springs, one of the most hauntingly beautiful musical themes of the entire franchise, in my opinion. A gorgeous instrumental version of Sacred Springs is included on this CD from, it's the rolling title ending from Godzilla vs. Mothra, or Mothra and Godzilla: The Battle for Earth. The version on this CD is the original vocal version that plays in the film, sung again by the Peanuts. Track 17 is main title / Monsters Appear in Yokohama from Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, composed by Ifukube. There's a lot going on in this track. The opening low notes on the bassoon, contrabassoon, I don't know, it's really down there, and the slightly jazzy from the cymbals, which kind of makes you want to, I don't know, snap your fingers and wear a zoot suit. And then, bwah, the signature Godzilla introductory theme blasts out on the lower brass. This turns out to be Godzilla's Rampage from the original 1954 film, expanded on, with the notes from Mothra vs. Godzilla's main title added at the beginning as a fanfare. So, blah, bum, 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 bum. And then when that's swelled, Ifukube introduces a new theme played very brightly on the trumpet. Da 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 da. The interval is really tricky. Da 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 da. I remember doing a little research on this back when I was reviewing these movies and finding that I wasn't the only one who was a little confused about who was supposed to be associated with this theme. King Ghidorah, or Ghidra, or Rodan, who also appears in this movie. That musical cue was used in later films for Rodan, but I'm pretty sure that in this movie, Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, it's played over footage of Ghidra laying waste to Japan. To further confuse things, it reappeared, I believe, at the very end of Godzilla 2000 when Godzilla was burning the city. I don't think the films were dogmatic about it, so I'm not going to be. Maybe Ifukube just reused the music without thinking so much about whose theme it was supposed to be. It was just destruction music. Track 18 is the main title, or Monster Battle March, from Invasion of the Astro Monster, with some sound effects thrown in, UFO noise, and the sounds of 3 monsters fighting on the planet. Not Godzilla's victory cry, though. The march is essentially a reiteration of the Japanese Army March from the 1954 soundtrack, but Ifukubes expanded on it here with this additional section. Dun 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 da 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 dun da da dun da da dun 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 dun. I feel like this is what's considered the primary military march of at least the Showa era of the Godzilla series. Tracks 19 through 21 are from Son of Godzilla, with music from Masaru Sato making the second of 3 appearances on this CD as composer, and right away the music tells you this movie's going for a different tone than the others. I wasn't a big fan of this movie. Most people aren't. It's pretty goofy, and the Son of Godzilla is bleh. But I shouldn't let that color my reaction to the music, which on its own is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. The main title does convey a certain goofiness, but in the track Godzilla vs. Kumonga, while the brass is so low it sounds a little too much like flatulence and the melody is barely discernible, the percussion section is pretty sweet. And then the rest of the band kicks in, and it sounds like something from an old 60s TV show like Mission Impossible or something. I can dance to it. It then fades into ending, which is more somber and then wistful. The end of Son of Godzilla is one of the best parts, and no, not because it's finally over, but because it's an endearing final shot. Godzilla finally being a good dad and huddling with his son in the snow. I can enjoy this music. There is something a little rough about the quality of the recording, though. I don't know if it's because the music itself is a little schmaltzy, or if there are actually a couple spots where the notes went a bit sour. Destroy All Monsters gets a big chunk of the CD, tracks 22 through 27. It starts with some battle sound effects, which... okay. We've got another recognizable theme in the title credits, a march similar in structure to the Japanese Army March / Monster Battle March, where the mood is optimistic and then a little darker to emphasize the dire threat being faced, and then it goes back to optimism. Bum bum ba-da-da, bum 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 ba-da-da, bum 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 ba-da, bum bum ba-da-da, bum ba-dum bum bum ba-da-da, bum bum. There is one part that reminds me of the song The Falcon in the Dive from the Scarlet Pimpernel musical. Probably there aren't a lot of Godzilla fans who are familiar with that number, but I just thought I'd mention it. The next track is 4 Monsters Attack Tokyo, and judging by the music cue, Godzilla shows up, and then Ghidorah, or maybe it's Rodan. Da-da-da-da! Yeah, it's that cue, and the trumpets go absolutely crazy with it! The next one is pretty exciting, titled Destroying the Remote Control, and then it's Showdown on Mount Fuji, which is big, getting ready to fight music. And then ending draws this section to a close. The very end has a few notes that remind me, again, of Requiem from Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. Lots of things that seem to show up again in that soundtrack. Track 28 is Cute Kid Theme / Monster Fight from All Monsters Attack, composed by Kunio Miyauchi. I do my best. Another film I wasn't crazy about, but taken separately, the music, which starts out quietly charming before exploding into some jazzy 60s era stuff for the fight scene, is a lot of fun. I like it better on its own than I did in the movie. Track 29 is Godzilla's Fight from Godzilla vs. Hedorah, or Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, composed by Riichiro Manabe. Fans will recognize this one right away, the silly, almost intoxicated blah, blah, Wah! And then the unmistakable cue that goes with that infamously silly moment when Godzilla flies. It's recognizable music if you've seen that scene a bunch of times, but just hearing it does make me roll my eyes. I also am surprised and slightly disappointed, that the James Bond-esque main title song wasn't included on the track. The booklet does mention this number not being included, as well as the exclusion of any music from Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, which they say had an unremarkable score, but it refers to the unusual English Save the Earth song, saying that it was owned by its American distributor. The implication is that they couldn't include it because of a copyright issue. Reading that makes me feel like, oh, well, then it's just as well you didn't include it because I wouldn't have been looking for the English language version. The next 3 tracks are from Godzilla vs. Gigan, and because Ifukube came back to do the music for this one, there's a tonal shift back away from the fun sounds of the last 2 selections. But track 32 does take us back to the 70s with what the liner notes say is Godzilla March record version. It doesn't say who's singing the vocals, and kids join him for the chorus, which is a reminder that Godzilla vs. Gigan, while it might have been darker than its obviously kid-friendly predecessors, was still geared toward children. Some Jet Jaguar sound effects usher in the next couple tracks, which are from Godzilla vs. Megalon. Ryuichiro Manabe came back to do the music for this one, and, while the very 70s music felt a little off when I was watching the movie, it made me laugh. I like it just fine on its own here. I enjoy 60s and 70s music, and out of context, it's fine. Godzilla of Monster Island is a little noisy, though. Manabe brought back that silly bwah, bwah, bwah from Smog Monster, and the whole track just sounds cluttered and bizarre. I guess you could call it experimental. I don't like it. Tracks 36 through 38 are from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, composed by Masaru Sato. Personally, I think this movie as a whole has one of the most fun scores. Godzilla vs. Anguirus is included here, and it's very big band and exciting. I've listened to the whole soundtrack, though, and I wish they'd included at least one more piece. Maybe swap something out for track 38, Miyarabi's Prayer, which, well, it's not that bad. But yes, the repetitive Shisa is a little... And can I take this opportunity to reiterate how disappointed I am, given how many songs were included, and I mean songs, vocal performances were included on this album, that the Goodbye Godzilla song from The Return of Godzilla, 1984, which I love, was not included on this album. I mean, they didn't neglect Return of Godzilla here. It got 5 tracks, but one more wouldn't have hurt anything. As long as it was the version from the film and not the pop release. I don't like the pop release version. How did I become somebody who gets so picky about what versions of end title songs from Godzilla movies I want to hear? We finish up with 4 tracks from Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was the last film of the Showa era and could have been the last film of the franchise period. Ifukube returned to write this score and delights the audience right off the bat by incorporating the Godzilla theme from the 1954 film. Yay! There is a funny buzzing theme that shows up a couple times in this track, like a plane or an electronic. I'm guessing that's to fit in with the movie's technological theme. Where's the sun? Track 40 is called Mechagodzilla 2, and it's more of the same from the last track until it settles down. There's something weird and atmospheric about the music for this movie, but it works for the subject matter. The highlight is the ending track, which I remember very well from the film. It's the scene where Godzilla slowly wades out to sea with a sepia sunset. It's fitting that Ifukube wanted to close the series on the same serious, mournful note with which he opened it, even though Godzilla's character by 1975 had changed from the antagonist to a hero, or an anti-hero. The CD closes on an amusing note with a track titled Theme from Godzilla, performed by Neil Norman and his Cosmic Orchestra. It's fun, though I don't think it beats out my favorite modernized take on the theme so far. There's a video on YouTube titled Forever Godzilla, Akira Ifukube Godzilla Medley of Glory, where you can hear it, and it's super 80s. That, plus several of the tracks that are on this CD, and on all of these CDs, are part of my Awesome Godzilla Music playlist here on YouTube, which I made public for anyone who would like to take a gander at it, although sadly, some of the tracks, some of the videos, I should say, have been deleted by the copyright police, which is disappointing because some of those I worked really hard to find, and I tried to get them in a certain order. The fact that some of those have been deleted makes me even happier that I have these CDs. I think that covers everything about this CD. It's got some of the most iconic music in the franchise, plus the later stuff with the 60s and 70s influences make it extra fun to listen to. It feels like it goes by fast, because a lot of the tracks are under 2 minutes long. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing. The other CD, which has music from the later era, has a different sound. Fuller orchestrations, more emotional tracks. That's reflective of how the composition's changed. It runs smoother without the sound effects, too, and it's got a lot of my favorite music from the franchise. Some absolutely beautiful stuff. But really, it's a 2-disc set. If you want to hear the full Godzilla series musical extravaganza, you should try listening to them both back to back. Okay, everybody, before it gets any darker in here, I'm gonna go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any of your own musings on this music, please feel free to share them in the comments below, and I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.